Views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Smart TVs. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me as usual is the Aaron part of the show, Aaron William Freeland. Hi, Aaron. It's been a while.
Well, yes, it has been. It's been a nice little bit of a break there, but we're back, folks. If you
Yeah,
missed us, we're back.
yeah, we're back. The news didn't stop. All kinds of stuff going on. We won't bother trying to capture everything that happened while everybody was somewhere else. Well, enough to say that summer's here. The heat is hot. It's very hot. Um, the only thing hotter is the frustration at Soccer Canada, um, with the financial issues, the way they worked out, missing out on two good games to be able to play, losing them to Mexico because Mexico jumped in and said, "Okay, we'll play." I think it was the United Arab Emirates and Korea.
I think it was Korea, yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that is something that. But let's talk about the Concacaf Gold Cup for now.
Well, I mean, there is a little bit of a bright hope in the darkness there. Down in Houston, Canada actually managed to advance to the CONCACAF Gold Cup quarterfinals. Junior Hoylett, Jonathan Osorio, Jaden Nelson, and Liam Miller all scored on Tuesday at Shell Energy Stadium. This victory means Canada is lucky enough to go on to face Group A winner, Team USA, in the tournament quarterfinals this Sunday evening.
Wow.
Now, they entered the contest needing a victory because they were sitting third behind Guadeloupe and Guatemala in Group D with just 2 points. That win resulted in Canada going 1-2-0 and finishing second, with the top 2 seeds advancing from each group. Guatemala finished atop Group D to advance with a 3-2 win Tuesday against Guadeloupe at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey. Canada earned back-to-back draws to open the tournament, a 2-2 draw against Guadeloupe in the opener in Toronto, where, if I recall correctly, I believe they were booed off the field, and a 0-0 tie against Guatemala in Houston on Saturday. So they're 10-3-2 against Cuba, with their last meeting being a 1-0 Canada win in September of 2019.
Yes. Soccer not in the best light right now, in our little world, our little red white world. And the team that won a championship, Toronto FC, TFC, lost. I'm having a hard time saying it. 4-0.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's what you yell when you screw up a shot in golf. 4!
Here we go again. No, okay. So they really, that's
Yeah.
got, Bill Manning's a friend of the show, and I don't even want to. It's becoming at halftime during the TSN broadcast. I don't know if you heard, Aaron, a former TFC player said he's so humiliated and embarrassed, and it's terrible the kind of game that TFC is playing. They're an embarrassment to Canada and the league, and I'm sitting here going, this organization has really fallen on hard times. And he suggested that the two Italians should be jettisoned. In other words, he was determining that they were the problem. They just got rid of the head coach. They're now with an intermediary coach. I don't know, Aaron.
I've been waiting for the new coach bump, which doesn't seem to have happened for these guys. But
Definitely
yeah,
not a bump.
no, oh no, it's more of a dip, meaning the wheels have fallen out completely. I mean, Cesar Araujo and Diego Torrelson each scored their first MLS goals last night. That's got to tell you something about how TFC has been playing. Um, And now Orlando, granted, is on a bit of a run. They're unbeaten in their last 7 regular season games against Toronto, including winning both meetings last season. It's the first time the Lions have gone unbeaten in 7 straight against a single opponent from where we were in 2019.
Oh boy.
Sorry, in 2017, the lofty heights that we reached during that year to now where we are here, just over half a decade later. You got to wonder what is going on behind the scenes that has made everything just an absolute tire fire here in Toronto. I'm just puzzled by this other
You
team.
know, I have no idea. All I can say is this: they're not playing like a team, and unfortunately, teams get put together by general managers. General managers get picked by more important people, and it just seems that they can't do anything right. Is this the I don't know. Is this the low point for TFC, or can they go lower? You know, I thought they achieved their low points last year. This year's proving to be even more frustrating. And you said it correctly when you phrased it in the sense of in a short 5+ years, this team has now gone from the highest of the highest heights to now the lowest of the lowest heights. I mean, the fans of TFC have experienced the full volume of and range of emotions that fans can have for a team over a longer period than 5+ years.
I would liken this to the full Maple Leafs experience. However, there's
Wow.
they are 3-9-10 and winless in 14 straight away games. Like that is absolutely crushing. And I'm not sure what the fix is here. Do you scrap it all and just start the junior squad and see what they can do? Do you start the academy team? I don't genuinely know at this point. There's nowhere for them to be relegated from here.
Well, they were trending in this direction before they brought in the two Italians.
Yeah, no, that's that's
But,
that's true.
right? They were trending in this direction before they brought in the two Italians. But they brought the two Italians in to trend in a different direction, and rather the trend has continued, the negative trend that's been going on for the past couple of years. Now the question is there patience, at MLSC, once you get rid of the coach, once a GM leaves, once another coach leaves, um, you know, there's only a couple of moves left, as far as making changes concerned, and it's a very terrible situation that TFC's in. The fans must be confused as heck, considering this is an organization that had so much success. I repeat again.
It almost seems like there's 5-year cycles to this. Bear with me here. I'm just going to take us on a bit of a journey. They originally started
Horrible.
back in 2007, and
Oh yeah.
5 years later, in October of 2012, they announced that they were rolling back season ticket prices after yet another disastrous season with a 5-20-7 record, which was worse than their expansion season record of 6-17-7. The lowest price for a season ticket at that point was $190. Now, track forward to 5 years later, TFC wins the MLS championship in the same year that the Argonauts coincidentally also win the Grey Cup.
17.
Everything is going absolutely fantastic. And then 2018, the Marlies win. 2019, the Raptors win. 2020 is supposed to be the Leafs year. The wheels absolutely fall off. And TFC turns itself from a Lamborghini into your grandfather's beater that he uses around the farm. I'm not sure what's happened here. I'm not sure if they can afford to lose more season ticket holders at this point, but it's certainly an interesting situation to find themselves in 10 years past their last season ticket production. So we'll
Yes,
see what happens.
the other team we cover, the other team I cover anyway, and the Argos are the reverse. Have been in the reverse. They, but they win and play terrible. Now, so far this year, they're proving that they could win a championship and still play well the following year. That's something relatively new for them. Let's talk about another team in Toronto that people are questioning upper management. The Toronto Blue Jays. You've got a team whose highest prospect pitcher was sent down because he just couldn't seem to find the strike zone. I'm referring to Alex Manoah. And they've got a young hitter in Guerrero Jr. who looked like he would be a league leader, and he hasn't panned out that way. And the team itself, loses not only series, but gets whitewashed, gets swept
Yeah.
by teams below them, which basically says they're going to be below they're where they are right now if they keep doing that, because you know th- this is another frustration for Toronto sports fans.
My mother-in-law flew in from Halifax for the Canada Day long weekend. We ended up catching 4 games: one against the Padres, 3 against the Boston Red Sox, and yeah, for all of that time and effort, we got to see a grand total of 1 win against the Padres and then 3 straight losses against the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah,
I mean, it was nice to see Vladdy step up and hit a 2-run homer to give the Jays a 4-3 win over the Chicago White Sox. But again, that's a game that they should be winning, just like games against the Bo Sox. They should have absolutely been winning,
yeah.
but it just hasn't been the case for them so far this season. This is one of those where Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has had a hard time catching fire. Um, there were some bright spots, but those seem to have fizzled. A couple weeks back, it looked like he was going to be dynamite again, having home runs in a couple consecutive games. But yeah, uh, wolf. Is pretty much all I have to say about that.
When it's bad is all I can say.
Yeah,
um,
and here's the thing, though. I don't even know if Manoa is ready. He played a grand
they
total.
said he was going to pitch against the Tigers.
I mean, that's about as close to AAA ball, I think, at this point as you're going to get without sending him to the Bison. But seriously, he went down to the Florida Complex League at the start of June. He made 2 starts in the minors. He got shelled for 11 runs on 10 hits in 2 innings. His Complex League outing on June 27th, before throwing a 1-run, 10 strikeout performance with Double A New Hampshire, the Fisher Cats, on Sunday. Those 2 starts, I don't think, are enough for this kid. It's I am curious as to what they're doing. I mean, his fastball was back around 93, 94 miles an hour in Sunday's game. So it looked like he was coming back. He threw only 47 of 82 pitches for strikes. That's nowhere near his normal percentage. Um, it's one of those things where I'm not sure if they're trying to rush him back in an effort to try to give him a little bit more confidence, or if our pitchers up here are so bad they feel they have to bring him back up again. I mean, Ryu's showing signs of promise. His work has been slowly improving. Nate Pearson has come back and looked relatively decent, except for the dude that he plugged in the leg with a 102-mile-an-hour pitch. But I mean, other than that, this is a Jays team that I think is looking at some serious issues when it comes to their bullpen. I think we can agree on that, at least.
Well, it seems as though they really did a great renovation to the stadium, but somehow the team was left behind as far as renovations are concerned.
Yeah, no, they put a new coat of paint on it, but they left the same oil in
The
the engine.
important
So I'm
part,
not sure how it's
the
going to work.
important part, the team. There's a lot of question marks with players that they've signed for giant contracts, and the question arises as to whether their value matches their paycheck, and there are some serious concerns in that regard. And I think for me the biggest thing that I find a problem with the Blue Jays, and it's been really for many years now, is their inability to score with men in scoring position. Key hits. They've been unable to do that, and some of those big contract guys are the guys that you expect to deliver on those. And you can't wait for the 6, 7, 8, 9 hitters to do that. It has to be the guys at the top of the lineup to generate those runs and create those big hits that score some runs and get everybody else going, right? It's like when you put a really good hitter at the number 3 spot when you have your cleanup guy. He has to be good enough to at least protect the number 4 hitter, so they've got to pitch to the first guy. So that number 4 hitter has to look at some pitches. So, this is the thing about the Jays. The Jays just have not been able to score or the pitching if they can't score and they get into ruts, the pitching begins to suffer because when you start using your bullpen, when you start using all your pitchers, when your pitchers are throwing 100 pitches, you've got to make some hay. You just can't leave them out there in the hopes that they're going to win 1-0. That just doesn't work.
No, and unfortunately, their collective defense just isn't good enough at this point either.
Yeah.
There were numerous instances in the past game where, and I wish they would put Bo back on a clock again because that dude is pitching them into the turf. Guerrero has a great arm. He can throw cross field if he needs to, but he needs to make sure that it's accurate. He rushed a couple throws that led to runs against the Sox, and unfortunately, those runs turned out to be the difference makers. And it's little things like that, defensive breakdowns like that, and their stunning ability to leave a plethora of players on base that has just made this team so incredibly frustrating and fun at times to watch. It's a little bit of both for me.
Okay, let's move over to the cold weather sport, hockey. Hockey Canada has named a new president and CEO.
Yep. So this is a step within the same world for the person that they've selected. They have chosen Catherine Henderson as president and CEO. This is sort of a sideways step for her. She spent the past 7 years as the CE of Curling Canada. So she'll be taking over just before the new season begins on September 4th. And now what was really neat was Catherine's successfully led initiatives to introduce new Canadians to the sport of curling. She spearheaded pay equity for men's and women's curling teams and led a financial turnaround of the organization's business model. Curling Canada wasn't exactly in the best place now. Now, prior to that, Henderson was the senior VP of marketing and revenue for the Toronto Pan Am Games organizing committee, where she helped games set attendance, ticket sales, and television rating records. So there is a bit of a pedigree here that Catherine is bringing to the role. Now, she's going to be replacing Scott Smith, who resigned last October when all of the governing body's board members also said they'd agreed to step down amidst the most recent scandal. And this is stemming from an incident in 2018 that led to a whole bunch of revelations in May of 2022 and continuing. So hopefully she'll be able to right the ship.
Well, only time will tell. Let's go over to the National Hockey League and let's start with the Habs signings.
So this has been fun to watch. Hasn't necessarily been all that fun for some folk as it has been for others. But David Reinbacher has been signed to a 3-year rookie contract. He was the 5th overall pick in the 2023 draft. I don't know if you actually watched the draft, but unfortunately, Carey Price completely blanked on his last name before getting rescued by his general manager saying, no, we planned it that way. Yeah, he's from Hohenems, Austria, and was selected by the Canadiens 5th overall. Their development camp has already started, so that's good. They've also extended Raphael Harvey Pinard. He has an AAV of $1.1 million, so that's good to see. Florian Cherkai has also been added to the list, and a 1-season contract for Elias Anderson. I don't know if you remember him, but he was the individual who threw his silver medal into the stands after a rather disappointing finish at the World Juniors. So things are shaping up nicely for them.
Yep. How about the Sens?
Travis Hamonic is back with a 2-year contract, so that's good. Now, it is $1.1 million, so they are getting a little bit more value for him. On the opening day of free agency, they also managed to land Eunice Corpusalo, who has been a thorn in the side of the Maple Leafs, both when he played in Nashville and when he played for the Kings. So glad that they picked him up there. They've also signed Eric Brandstrom and Jacob Bernard Docker to new contracts on July 1st. And again, these are show me deals, 1 year show me deals for a lot of these guys.
That's
So
a lot
that's
going around. That's the 1 year deal is going to be the new deal.
yeah, and I'm fully appreciating that because instead of giving them these players all of their money up front, like certain organizations prefer to do, there's a bit of a sense of you have to actually earn it out there, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, they're finally the league's finally figuring out that players are just deck chairs. That's all they are. They're deck chairs. There's nice deck chairs and there's deck chairs that aren't so nice. Then there are the deck chairs you need because you have the people to fill them. And
Here,
you don't need to sign 7 year contracts for average deck chairs. Uh, you know, so
so which team's the Titanic? And
uh,
which team is it not going to matter on when they keep rearranging the deck
well,
chairs?
the
I'm
Leafs
sorry.
right now are living on the edge of it. We'll get to them in a second, but
Yeah.
the Senators are a team that are upwardly mobile. They have cap room. They have great young talent. The one thing they were lacking was consistent goaltending. So the Corpusalo signing answers a very important question and can lead and probably will lead finally to the Senators team making the playoffs. And when we speak of teams who haven't made the playoffs making the playoffs, we have to also remember that means somebody who did make the playoffs isn't going to make the playoffs. And there's probably a lot of fans out there that are concerned with whose team ends up being the not in the playoffs group. Let's talk about the Jets right now. This is a team in flux. They bought out their former captain. He went to New York for a very small amount of money. Again, that's another example of what's going on. And these buyouts, there were tons before free agency, just before it.
Yeah, it's like some teams knew which way they needed to go and what they had to do. Here's a nice little piece of news for you. This actually broke about half an hour ago. The Jets have actually signed defenseman Dylan Sandberg to a 2-year deal. He played 63 games for the Jets and recorded 8 points and 25 penalty minutes. He's got an average value, an AAV of 1.4 million. They also signed Dominic DeVincentis. There we go. To a 3-year entry-level deal. So they picked him up in the draft. Brossoit, formerly of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, Stanley Cup winner Laurent Brossoit, and Tony Iafallo, formerly of the Kings,
Yeah.
sorry, Alex Iafallo, are both coming as well. So that's good. Alex Johnson Fjotelby has also been signed to a 2-year contract. They have also acquired Artemi Nizev from the San Jose Sharks. That was on July 2nd. So things seem to be picking up a little bit on that regard too. I've noticed they've picked up actually 3 or 4 players from the San Jose Sharks. So it looks like they may have actually found a new trade partner. So I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, there you go. And then, of course, you've got the Flames. Their general manager left, showed up with the Leafs. They're a team that have players, many that don't want to be there. Hopefully, conversations can lead to changing their feelings about leaving. This is an organization and a Canadian team, and you know how I feel about the Canadian teams. I want all good things to all Canadian teams, and this is probably the team that has taken it on the chin more than any other.
Well, after they lost Gaudreau and they lost Kachuk, there wasn't a lot that was actually coming back. There's actually been more activity on the Calgary Wranglers side of things than there has been on the Calgary Flames side of those things.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't aware, the Calgary Wranglers are the old Abbotsford Heat, who were the Flames affiliate. They've now moved them both into the Saddle Dome. The most recent signing that I can see here would have been Brady Lyle. He's one of those, one of those new signings, as well as Jordan Esterly, who came over from the Detroit Red Wings. Now there are a couple other players that they've actually signed to free agent deals. Some of these people will sound familiar. Dryden Hunt, for example, Maple Leaf legend, Martin Pospisil, and Colton Pullman have all signed UFA deals with Calgary Flames. Those are 2 ways.
That's a lot of what's happening. That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. And now a team in the Oilers with two of the best players in the world, never mind the National Hockey League, looking for a better showing in the playoffs. Well, by better I mean winning the cup. Um, this is a team that will, it turns out, rely on Jack Campbell being the Jack Campbell they signed, not the one that played for them.
And it gave Skinner an opportunity to show what he had as well. Now they also signed Olivier Rodrigue to a 1-year extension. They drafted him in 2018 in the second round. They've given him just a little bit of an extension there. Um, it's one of those situations where they have a lot of the major pieces that they need. It's just filling in the little bits around the corners that seem to be uh, an issue for them and seems to be eluding them.
It's the
Um,
same cry that goes around the league. It is very difficult to pay really good players that play for your team excessive amounts of money, because then there is not enough left to bridge the gap to, to the rest of the lineup, where you have a real pratfall, a real gap in quality players after you get out of the first, the top two lines. The third and fourth lines are basically guys that, so can you hold a stick? So can you skate to the other end of the ice? You got to have a little more than that if you want to win a Stanley Cup. But unfortunately, the cap in Canada is the enemy. They talk and say, it really doesn't matter. The tax issue isn't a big deal. But three of the four teams that made it to the semifinals, if you want to call it the semifinals, or the Eastern Western finals, were teams that don't pay tax. They're in states that don't pay tax. And I don't care what anybody says, it's not a level playing field. The NHL is not a level playing field. The Oilers can't do some stuff because they can't bring in players and say, look, we don't have any tax here in this province. We'll pay you. You'll be able to keep a lot more money. Um, I'm sorry, Aaron, but I think players are human and players play for money. And in society in general, people in general, not many people can ever have, I'm sorry to say this, I don't know if I'm one of them, I've never been given the opportunity to accept gobs and gobs of money, will say, yeah, that's enough. That's the problem. And the Canadian teams are behind the eight ball each and every year, and it's going to become more and more evident. Hopefully not. The Canucks are another team that, you've got players, you've got an organization that has some really good players, and then they try paying players they shouldn't have paid, and then that's the kiss of death. What about the Canucks and free agent signings? Do you think they've done something in their accomplishments heading towards a better season for them from what you see?
Well, I mean, one of the major things that they did was they bought out OEL, and I think that was
Yeah,
really important to them because he was a player that seemed to have fallen completely off the map.
boy, it's
So
really sad when the best deal you make is the one you undo.
yeah, well, uh,
Oh boy.
but like on the other side of that, they did pick up Ian Cole from the Tampa Bay Lightning on a 1-year deal. They also agreed to terms with Carson Soucy on a 3-year deal worth an AAV of $3.25 million. So they've actually managed to bolster their blue line a little bit. Not to mention also acquiring Teddy Bluger, excuse me, from the Vegas Golden Knights on a 1-year deal versus for 1.9 million. Um, they've also re-upped uh, terms with Tristan Nielsen on a 2-year entry level deal. He was originally playing with the Vancouver Giants, so that's good. They've also agreed to terms with um, defenseman Matt Irwin and goaltender Zach Sachenko, both on 1-year 2-way contracts. So they've done some tinkering here and there with what they actually can after freeing up some room by buying out OEL. Um, it's it's things are looking relatively positive for them at this point. So I'm not entirely displeased with the way that things have gone for them.
I just had a thought, really crazy, stupid thought, probably senseless and dumb. But
Mm-hmm.
can you imagine if, let's say, now we'll talk about the Maple Leafs now, and on behalf of the Maple Leafs, not we talk about the Maple Leafs, but on behalf of the rest of the Canadian teams, wouldn't it be interesting if, let's say, I'm just saying, what if teams paid like the provincial tax, or paid some of the tax on behalf of the players, that would make it equal to what a player in Florida gets, a player in Texas gets, a player in Nevada gets. Do you know what I'm saying? And then have an argument with the National Hockey League about doing it. And I would sue the National Hockey League and say this isn't fair, and they should do it. I think it's time that the Canadian teams should do something like that to level the playing field.
That's actually not a bad thought.
It's
I
crazy.
mean, part of what goes on with the Maple Leafs as well, though, is through a partnership with Rogers and with Bell. They are able to get players endorsement deals. I mean, Ilya Mikheyev, from a throwaway comment in training camp, "I like soup," ended up with an endorsement from Campbell's. So it's one of those things where there are all these little things that they can do.
You know, the league doesn't like that they do that, right? Because originally, when Tavares was coming, Canadian Tire was willing to throw money at him,
Oh yeah. Oh no.
and
They
the league said
and
no.
mm,
And the league said no.
yeah.
Canadian Tire in particular. Yeah, any advantage that Canadian teams have, the National Hockey League will go, nope, can't do that. But I think they should push it a little harder. It is not a good business practice. It's not a fair business practice when a player can make a choice to playing from one team in one country to another team in another country because they're paid more. And supposedly there's a cap that's supposed to be something that levels the playing field. In fact, it sets up an unlevel playing field. So yeah, I agree with you. It'd be interesting anyway.
I'd rather see them adopt a luxury tax version, because the
Yeah,
teams that can afford to pay more can pay more, as opposed to having smaller market teams being propped up by bigger teams.
yeah.
Um,
Well, you're not going to have big city teams because big city teams are in places where taxes are high, right?
yeah,
So the disadvantage is to the New Yorks, the LAs, and for a short time, it didn't look like it. The Chicago's, but that's changing, rapidly. The Bruins are an anomaly in that regard because they get decent contracts. How they do it, it's magic, but look at the players they had after the trade deadline,
unbelievable. Just
right?
they
You know what I
managed to pick
mean?
up.
The
Yeah,
contracts they have, and then the contracts they have as a Bruin. But they paid at the end of this year. Guys like we'll talk about the Leafs now, where the Leafs picked up Bertuzzi. What do you think? Tell us the signings for the Maple Leafs, and then we can have a little discussion about them, since we do pay attention to what they do and don't do.
I'm going to rewind a little bit. Actually, we're going to go back to the good old yesterday of June 28th. That was when the Maple Leafs turned around and signed Marley Standout and
The
uh,
goalie?
no, Pontus Holmberg,
Oh,
actually,
Holmberg.
for two
Okay.
years at $800,000, and David Kampf to 4 years at $2.4 million, which ruffled a lot of feathers. There were a lot of people that were very not happy with that. Then on July 1st, they went out and they got 36-year-old Ryan Reeves and signed him to a 3-year contract worth $1.35 million each. This is a really interesting signing to me, because he's not just a player with some physical presence, but he does actually have a little bit of a playmaker in him as well. Um,
And he's a dressing room guy. He's a locker room guy.
Yeah, one of the interesting comments that came out of this past season, especially during the playoffs, was, "Hey, we went out in Tampa Bay last night, and that's the first time we've done something on the road as a team." And I said, "Excuse me? Pardon? You've been on this team for how long? And this is the first time y'all have been out to a restaurant together as a team on the road?" I know John's, and this is no reflection. Well, it's partially a reflection on the captain, but at the same time, it's like, I know John's a laid back guy, and it's like, hey guys, do your thing. But part of playing on a team is being cohesive and meshing. So Revo is the kind of guy I think that would like to get this team involved and get them all to hang out a little bit more. And I can't say I'm upset by that. He's also a player that's demonstrated many times in the past that he's willing to go. So, this is not a bad thing.
Well,
Now,
this is the hard part, Aaron, when a player says, "I want to be a Maple Leaf," and then they proceed to ask for a contract. They make a contract request. Now, take you and I out of this equation. Take the fans out of the equation. Put the players who are in the locker room with that guy in the equation. You get my drift? It's no surprise they're not having dinner together
oh yeah, no, because all the
because they're
rookies that
all
make
eating at
under eight
different
hundred thousand
restaurants.
dollars are paying for it.
Well, you got guys eating pretty good, and then you got the guys going to Burger King.
And you know what? Honestly, I'm not upset by this contract at all. It's $1.35 million. If he's not working out, you can send him down to the Marlies and give the fans down there a little bit of a thrill and bury 1.1 million of his $1.35 million contract. Oof, problem is
Right.
solved.
Absolutely, and they've done that over the years.
Yep,
They've
they've
had
shown a
lots of
willingness to do
contracts.
that.
Yep. But he's a guy who's going to ruffle some feathers in the locker room. Thank goodness.
Now, they also announced another four signings. These completely got swept under the rug. Nobody, I guarantee you, nobody noticed these. They've signed goaltender Artur Akhtyamov as well as William Lagesson from the Montreal Canadiens, Max LaJoy from the Carolina Hurricanes, and re-signed Marshall Riffai, who spent a couple games up with the Maple Leafs, back to the Marlies as well. So that's part of that. They also signed
Yeah,
John Klingberg.
yeah, that was weird.
But
And they
picking up
signed him for a
Klingberg,
lot of money.
yeah, $4.15 million for a 1 year contract. So this is again. I think this is a show me deal.
Well, they
Klingberg
all
hasn't
are.
been
They're
having a
all the
lot of
one-year
luck.
contracts. When was the last time you saw this many one-year contracts? Just take it to the Leafs
Yeah,
of this
no,
nature.
what? Honestly, can't remember.
No, we've seen lots of 1 year for 1 million. We've seen a lot of 1 year for 800,000, but we haven't seen 1 year for $4 million or 3.5 million. So there's a change. With this is what's happening. I think this is probably part of the effect of the cap not rising, right? So teams have been burned by long-term contracts, and nothing says it more than all the bought-out contracts that happened before free agency.
And here's the thing: Klingberg back 4 or 5 years ago was actually more of a hot commodity. I mean, 2016-17 he had 49 points. 2017-18 he had 67 points. He was supposed to be a big up and comer for Dallas, and then all of a sudden at the start of the pandemic, late 2019, early 2020, like he fell off a cliff. His point production dropped drastically. His plus minus got infinitely worse. I mean, his offensive upside was still there with his assists and what have you, but this is a player who it looks like lost his way. So this 1 year deal is a nice way for him to see if he can redeem himself and get back on the right track. Um,
The Leafs are trying really hard to improve the top six and have something left over for the bottom six, or at least the top nine.
and this is their do or die year.
Yeah, well, they've had do or diers every year, it seems, but this one
Well,
it becomes more intense. You're right. You're right. Yeah, I'm just saying, Aaron, that
yeah,
they've had do or diers for the last few years, but it's like well, you know, uh, we keep hearing it, right? What's that saying? The boy who cries wolf. Eventually, the wolf shows up, just because the wolf gets tired of just ignoring them.
well, and like you mentioned before, the Boston Bruins managed to pick up a whole bunch of guys, so we managed to pick up a guy as well from the Boston Bruins. On July 2nd, we signed Tyler Bertuzzi to a 1 year, $5.5 million deal.
Another top six,
Yep.
squeeze out a guy. Yeah, and all the guys that have been brought in by this GM, you notice the big contracts, except for, well, I don't know. I don't think Klinberg is a sandpaper guy, but the other three are.
Yeah, this is one of those.
We haven't mentioned the last one, the son of sandpaper.
We'll call him Smooth Grit. No, for 1 year at $3 million, the Toronto Maple Leafs have signed Max Domi. So over the course of his father's career, I think a lot of people got to know the kid and got to appreciate what he could bring to the table. Now he's had a bit of a career. He's bounced
Up
around.
and down, up and down.
Yeah. No, and there's
Bertuzzi, up and down, up and down. Klinberg, up and down. This is where the Leafs have. This is where they're trying to hit the lottery.
Well, I genuinely think at this point here they're just working on a whole bunch of reclamation projects.
Absolutely,
You know,
they're trying
so
to hit the lottery.
we'll pick up Reeves, we'll pick up Klingberg on defense, we'll pick up Bertuzzi, we'll pick up Domi. We'll see what these guys can do when we put them with player X or player Y. Um, it also demonstrates that you know what, guys with 1 year left on their deals, like Marner, like Nylander, like Matthews, like, you know, we can replace you.
The world is
We've got
changing.
guys that we think are your equivalent here
Yep.
for less money.
Do you think the young defenseman they brought in, is a whole lot better than the defenseman that went to Detroit?
I'll be honest with you, no. I would have rather we kept him, but not at that price.
No,
So,
he
you
went
know,
for a pretty good price, didn't he?
he really did, and I think he's earned it. You know,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think unfortunately, when you give a guy the kind of responsibility you give, and he got and he received with various supposed better defensemen, he's played with a lot of really good defensemen on the Leafs. He's played with the better defensemen, and it seems that he took a lot of the blame or the heat for the lack of consistent success that the pairing had. Everybody seemed to point at him. I think I think he was over 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 blamed for what was going on.
oh, I mean, you put him with a guy that was coming back off a busted wheel in Morgan Riley. You put him with one of the oldest players in the game currently in Giordano. You know, you slipped him alongside a guy like Muzzin, who was suffering through neck injuries, and everything that's bad was apparently not Muzzin's fault. You know, like there's got to be a certain point here where the blame ends, and you have to acknowledge that this dude is probably going to win a Stanley Cup somewhere else. And no word of a lie, I think there's a lot of Maple Leafs players that have gone on to win cups somewhere else, and I'm not sure what
Absolutely.
it is about the air and the water in Toronto that prevents us from winning cups, or prevents them from winning cups
It's
over here.
management. It's management.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's the Shannon plan or that the Shannon plan is busted, but um, I'm thinking maybe Dubas wasn't really that much of a problem.
Well, if what we believe is true, and
Well, we'll see.
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. I'm going to take that back. If what I believe is true, and that the officiating tends to skew against Toronto, if I'm right about that, why doesn't management do something about it? It's not like it just started this year. They've lost series based on poor officiating. Why can't the Leafs organization play some hardball with the National Hockey League and call them out? In Boston, when Boston was having some problem, you may not remember this because maybe you're too young, but their captain that might be retiring, he got a concussion, and the Bruins went ballistic after that. And from then on, everything that happened to the Bruins, they would constantly go, "No, we're not having that kind of stuff happen again. You stand on basically on merit and the truth, and you pummel it. You take it in the corner and check the crap out of it. That's what you got to do." And the Leafs lack the intestinal fortitude to take on the National Hockey League in ways that they should. It doesn't mean they have to do it in public. They got to do it in some form or fashion, because it's not fair to the Leaf fans, and that's who I vote for first. The Toronto fans, period, not Maple Leaf fans, Toronto fans in particular. So I really think there's something that needs to be done there, and it doesn't matter who manages the team. Don't forget, Dubas went out angry. Remember what he was like in those last few games?
Oh yeah, he was not a happy man at all.
And he was angry. What was he angry at? The team? The players that he loves so much?
I think it's the fact that the team
The
wouldn't
way
do
they
anything to
lost.
back up his players.
And the way they lost was a frustration to him. And that's and he made a smart move. If he wants to win a cup, he's not going to do it in Toronto, and he went to Pittsburgh, where there's a good chance he can win the cup.
Now, this is going to sound silly, but bear with me here. One of the owners of the Toronto Maple Leafs is a company by the name of Rogers Communications.
Right.
Another one of the companies that owns the Maple Leafs is Bell Media.
Right.
Now, they both have different television stations in Toronto, one by the name of the Sports Network and the other by the name of, I believe it's Rogers Sportsnet. And they have the rights to broadcast Canadian hockey games.
Right.
I'm wondering if maybe there's something that can be done on that front with regard to, uh, I don't know, maybe changing
Here
the NHL's minds on a few things.
here's what I'm going to say about that. You're right to believe that. That is a very um, it adds up. What you're saying adds up. Here's the thing. What happens is that's what makes the Leafs so prone to be jobbed like they've been jobbed in the past couple of years, because TSN and Rogers can't say anything. They
Mm,
can't. So what happens is, because they can't say anything, because they can't appear to be asking for favoritism, they get the reverse. They get the opposite. It's like the old days when the referees. The biggest concern, people used to say, Canadian referees are the best. Remember those days? The Canadian referees are the best. Here's the thing about the Canadian referees: they could sometimes possibly call calls against Canadian teams in an attempt not to show favoritism, and in doing so, do have and show favoritism. The same way we talk about not calling a penalty because you don't want to do something positive for a team, but not calling it is a negative, but they don't look at that part. My point is that everything's upside down, and that's what makes it difficult. When you can't deal straight. That's why I've always been, Aaron, with you, and this is the whole reason this whole thing is part of what my machination is. And call me a moron, call me an idiot. That's why I believe they should call all the penalties. Because if they call all the penalties, there's no worry about which penalties you should call at a certain time, which penalties you shouldn't call at a certain time. How do we define a penalty if we let it go in this instance? If you call everything, if the way they treat penalties is the way they treat hooking, the way they used to, I'm not sure anymore. Remember, hooking was if they put their stick in the guy's gloves, it was hooking. That's a line you're not allowed to cross, correct?
yep.
That's what it used to be, right? Now I'm not sure anymore, because that's changed a little bit too. So if you clearly define penalties, Rogers, TSN, Leaf management, Leaf general managers don't have to complain about the officiating, because there won't be anything to complain about if they define the penalties and call them all the time the way they are. What we saw in the playoffs is we saw penalties allowed not to be called. And then when they're not called, they give an advantage. And if they don't call against one team more than they do the other, you're giving an advantage to a team. I admit it's a slight advantage, but nothing in the playoffs is defined more than the minor difference between two teams for one to advance. And that's my point. End of story. Every little advantage in the playoffs is a big advantage because the competition is so equal. That's it's basically, for me, it's just math, and the math to me says, if a penalty, call a penalty. If you call every penalty, the team that's better will win, or at least
And
have a chance to.
in that, Frank, you and I certainly agree. A penalty is a penalty is a penalty. It doesn't matter if it's in the first 30 seconds.
Doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter if it's in the last 30 seconds of triple overtime in the Stanley Cup Finals. If a hook is a hook in January, then a hook is still a hook in April, is still a hook in June. It's all the same penalty. And this, I think, for a lot of fans, you and me included, obviously, in all this, is the variability in this. We want consistency. I'll be honest with you. I don't care if the game takes 6 hours. Get the calls right,
But it won't.
please.
This is what infuriates me. We only
It'll
got
be
a
even
couple
faster.
minutes left.
It'll be even faster.
Well, it'll be faster because it'll be cleaner, because it's when they don't call a penalty that it fosters that play repeated. If they call every penalty the way they're supposed to be called, in other words, remember, if you touch the gloves, it's hooking. Well, players didn't touch gloves anymore because they knew that was a line. They can't cross that line, right? And when you high stick somebody, it doesn't matter whether it was on purpose or by accident or whatever. It only matters that you made contact with the player's face. It's a penalty. If you turn the way the league operates, which frustrates me, is they make excuses on the way to calling a penalty the way it's supposed to be called. You know, when they bring the word that I hate, I want to swear right now. The word I hate the most when it comes to referees, it's a judgment call. Ah!
Yeah, there should be no judgment involved in any of this. Top to bottom, start to finish. At the end of the day, even
It's
if
a
you're in the
slippery
last
slope.
5 seconds, there's no such thing as a judgment call. It's either a penalty or it's not.
It's the slippery slope that causes
Exactly.
confusion. It's the slippery slope. Anyway, it was fun talking about hockey games and officiating, Garen. This was a pleasure. Good
Glad
seeing
to
you
be
after
back,
so
Frank.
long. Okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Soon we'll be back on Fridays. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. And don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube.